Sichuan chili prawns was a relatively obscure dish in the United States until the Japanese Iron Chef TV series, when it was Chen Kenichi's signature dish made with XO sauce, as I'm using here. What you probably don't know is that a related dish was already very popular in Japan at the time, and it's the same way that most recipes say how to make it now, with ketchup and bottled chili sauce, but that has nothing to do with the original Sichuan chili prawns. It's like a tricycle and a Rolls Royce. They'll both get you down the street, but once you know better, you'll feel pretty foolish on that tricycle.
So I've got about 200 grams of shrimp that I've peeled and deveined. These are fairly large, about finger size, as you can see. Don't use really small shrimp, they won't work. Don't use giant shrimp, they also won't work. So you need ones that are kind of in between, large but not huge. A couple of skins, about 3 scallions here. We're going to divide it. We're going to use the white part in the stock and the green part in the actual dish. A little sesame oil and the cornstarch. It's about 1.5 teaspoons of cornstarch gets added to the shrimp. Just marinate these in the refrigerator while we're making the rest of the dish. When the pan is hot, add about a teaspoon or so of sesame oil, not a lot, and all of the shells from the shrimp. After a few minutes, when they're nicely toasted, and you can tell they're quite dry now, we're going to add the white parts of the scallion and cook it for another minute or so to soften up that scallion a little bit. Okay, it's been about 1.5 minutes. I'm adding water to it. It's 150 milliliters of water. And the heat's, up till now, the heat's been fairly high. It's been about 7.5 out of 10. Now I'm lowering it down to about 4. Bring this up to a simmer and just let it simmer for a few minutes while we begin making the rest of the sauce here. Now for the first stage of the sauce, you're going to need a lot of chilies. I'm using 60 grams of red chilies here. Of course, they'll weigh a little bit less after I cut the stems off, and you can scrape them and seed them if you want. This is supposed to be a very hot dish. You might be better off, if you like hot food, just get the stems off and chop them up. Don't take the seeds or the membranes out. Depends on how hot you like it. I've got 30 grams of cooked shrimp. I could have just as easily used raw shrimp. This is not the same shrimp that's going to be used in the dish because that's too expensive. So I'm using these cheap, they're not quite bay shrimp, but they're almost bay shrimp. You can use bay shrimp for this. Just a little bit more than a tablespoon of brown sugar. This is light brown sugar. And I've already weighed out 45 grams of peanut oil. This is the XO sauce for later and the green onions for later. So the next step is to cut up these chilies. In the stick blender cup now, I've got the chilies, the shrimp, the sugar, the peanut oil, and I'm adding those garlic cloves. It's 25 grams of garlic. 20 to 25, somewhere in there. And then you scrape that out of the blender cup and begin frying it. It doesn't need any additional oil because it's got a lot of oil in it. Using a fairly high heat, 7.5 out of 10 here. And we're going to cook this well for a few minutes. In the meantime, we're going to finish making that shrimp stock. I have the contents of the shrimp shells and the water and the white parts, the green onion, scallions. And now I'm adding the Shaoxing wine to it. You can use dry sherry. They'll also work. Then pass the mixture through a sieve. Obviously, most of the contents won't go through because it's shrimp shells, but get as much through as you can. This liquid that's underneath here is going to add body and flavor to the sauce. You could just use plain water. Obviously, this is going to be a lot better. Don't judge the taste of this. If you dip a spoon in this and taste it, remember it has no salt in it. We have not added any salt yet, so it won't have very much flavor right now, but it'll contribute a lot of flavor when you're all done with the dish. Okay. And in the meantime, on the other side here, the red chilies and garlic, peanut oil, all that is cooking still. I've lowered the heat down a little bit. It went down to 6 because it was just a little bit too frantic there. And it's been cooking now for almost 5 minutes. I'm going to it gets a little bit brighter red, as you can see. We're going to give it just a little bit more, another couple minutes. Okay, it's been cooking for just over 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes now. The oil is starting to separate pretty good there. Let's scrape this off. Okay. Now, this has to go in the freezer and cool for just a few minutes before we can proceed. Now, we have the shrimp that were mixed with the cornstarch back in the fridge, and the sauce that we just made here has cooled down to about room temperature. It doesn't need to be super cold because the shrimp's going to cool it down some more anyway. Just don't put it in hot. So, I'm going to mix this around now. We need to let the shrimp marinate a little while. How long is up to you. I'm going to give them about 10 minutes. And I'm also going to leave them out. I'm not putting them in the refrigerator for this 10 minutes. We also have here the passata that'll be used, the XO sauce, this shrimp stock we improvised here quickly, and some green onions, scallions. And while it's marinating, grate about a tablespoon of ginger and chop up the scallions. The pan is very hot now. I just checked the temperature. It's 220, 230 Celsius. Adding a little bit of peanut oil. Not too much because this mixture that we're going to cook here has got a lot of oil in it already. So here's the shrimp and the marinade. Chili sauce, as it were. I'm counting the time right now. Watch the time. There will be some splattering. You will be doing some floor cleaning after this. Nothing you can do about it. Don't stir around too much because otherwise it won't have a chance to really brown. Okay, this is looking pretty good already. It's been about 1 minute since I added the shrimp, and I can smell it's ready too. Now the passata goes in. Whoa, this is a very, very powerful smelling dish. The ginger, and it's been about 1 minute 45 seconds. Coming up, okay, it's a little bit after. It's about 2 minutes now. Now I'm going to add that shrimp stock that we made earlier. This is going to cool it way down. This will help stop the shrimp from overcooking. And the XO bean paste, and the extra moisture from this is gonna kind of rehydrate that XO paste. And we'll also add some of the green onion, the scallion. Now we just need to reduce this until it's the right thickness, which is not going to take very long. Don't over reduce it. Don't overboil the shrimp and make them tough.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link.
Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.